Hello everyone. Today we are gonna be finding out whether Ineffa is any good. And well, in fact I have already found out whether she is any good. But today's deck looks like... I think it's this one. Yeah, this is my latest version of my Ineffa deck, which... Well, actually, in today's replays, we are going to see I'm gonna be playing exactly two different versions of the same deck. I think this is the original version. Notable changes I've made in the, I'd say, the improved version. No longer do we have Varokasha's Glow, and I'd rather lose money myself, and the fast action switch have been changed to Blessing of M, and of course we now have Heart of Kavarina. Anyway, this is like the deck that I'm gonna be mostly basing my opinions on today, as I'm going to discuss quite a lot about Ineffa, because when I first saw her kit, it truly seemed complicated. Now that I've tried it out, as you can see here, it's a bit of a hit or miss scenario with Ineffa. I can already spoil this much. None of these 5 victories, none of them were clean, all of them had losses. And of course this is even with the this is with the improved version. I ended up having bad matchups. Only got 2 wins. But anyway, let's get into the replays, as I have quite a lot to talk about Ineffa. Now, as per usual, for this first game I'm simply going to go over more about the game plan with this deck. Then in the following games I'm going to, during the following games after this one, I'm going to explain why Ineffa is good and isn't good. Anyway, you can probably, by looking at my deck, guess what this is about. Ineffa skill, of course, only gives a summon, doesn't do immediate electro damage, which is why we want to combo Ineffa with another Hydro character to get the new reaction on the TCG, the Lunar Charge.
Illusion shattered.
For that reason, because Ineffa doesn't immediately apply Electro, we have Furina, because her summon, as you're going to see here, combos quite well with the Lunar Charged. Actually, we have to wait a little. Quick thing here, I can mention already. Ineffa, to be effective, you really rely on the talent card. Keep that in mind for the future, as that's going to be one of the major things. But let's quickly, now that there is, what is that effect? Electric Shock, I think was the name. Yeah, Electric Shock. You can see my opponent now has Electric Shock. Applied, we can quickly switch to our opponent's side. This is what the Lunar Charge does. I can wait a moment, we can see here as my summons reapply Lunar Charge, so it becomes easier to explain. You can see their Cold Flame Tyrant took 2 pierce damage. Why did they took 2 pierce damage? Because there's 2 electric shock. The more electric shock you have on your cards, the more pierce damage you are going to take in the end phase. I think the only notable part about electric shock, it is the very last thing that happens during the round. All your mushroom pizzas, all your summons, all your support cards activate before electric shock. This is the very last thing that happens, which is only really, well, in certain scenarios it's bad for Ineffa decks, because for example, if you would win thanks to the damage Electric Shock does, but the opponent's summons take you out before that, in those scenarios it's bad. And well, but in scenarios like this where the opponent's character has already full HP, the healing effects of course happen before you take the damage. So there's like, it can be beneficial that it happens at the very last thing, but it can also be you know, a hindrance in scenarios. But you're gonna see here, Lunar Charge, only 1 damage, no added reaction damage, and we got the Thundercloud summon. This comes from the Lunar Charged. This is the main Lunar Charged thing. You get a Thundercloud, so no additional reaction damage, but instead you get the Thundercloud. And Thundercloud, when this card enters the field, or its usages increase, meaning you can very well combo it with, you know, People of the Springs, for example. Apply Electric Shock. What is Electric Shock? Well, it's this thing here. The 2 Electric Shock the opponent already had came from Ineffa's talent card, but now their Arcane card also has Electric Shock that came from the Thundercloud. Now, notable part, Lunar Charged only creates the Thundercloud and Electric Shock. Then why is there a cost increase and untunable? The untunable comes from Ineffa's passive skill. The untunable comes from here. When an action card is attached with Electric Shock, also attached untunable. So it kind of doesn't matter currently, because every card, only Ineffa is able to currently create Lunar Charged. As such, every card with Electric Shock will also have untunable. But untunable isn't yet that big of a deal. I mean, my opponent can just play these cards and there goes the Electric Shock damage. What really matters is this right here, cost increase. Note that it hasn't updated yet. I think we have to wait until next round to see it. Where does the cost increase come from? That comes from Ineffa's talent card. Once we get over the rolls here, I think we are going to see it there. Now we see the cost increase. So it does take a little while to actually update the dice cost of your cards to represent the cost increase, but you can see there now the star sign is 3 dice, and you can see it's nice red to showcase that it has been, the cost has been increased. But that comes from Ineffa's talent card. When you trigger Lunar Reaction, apply cost increase to 1 random card. Keep this in mind, random card, not like the passive skill that comes untunable with Electric Shock. With the talent card, it's to a random card. So not guaranteed to go to the card with Electric Shock. Keep this in mind. But now you get a bit of an idea how it looks to the opponent. You can see there they played the 3 cost star signs there. Let's switch back to my side. The game plan for, by the way, my deck, let's quickly go over it here so I don't need to go over that in the future. Start with Ineffa, round 1, Ineffa skill, Furina skill, round 2, redo a Furina skill or switch to Tulpa. If you switch to Tulpa, it's recommended to switch Furina to healing mode, because in this case, firstly, it's quite likely your team has taken AoE damage, and anyway, when you do the skill with Tulpa is going to take damage, so the likelihood that you have at least 2 characters that have taken damage is very high, and as such, the healing summon from Furina will get some value. So switch Furina to healing if you go to Tulpa. Tulpa skill once or twice, hoping to, of course, activate either Birgitta or Thundercloud. In the case that Birgitta activates, you can go to Ineffa and redo a skill, because then you have gotten a half Tulpa from Hydra Tulpa's passive skill, and then you have Thundercloud half Tulpa. And after that you want, of course, Furina summon, if you have put it on to healing mode, does not apply Hydro, so you want to go to Ineffa and redo Ineffa's skill. But yeah, that's if you go to Hydro Tulpa round 2. Alternatively, round 2, redo Furina skill 10 go to Tulpa, or redo Furina skill burst Furina. Furina here, of course, now that I have switched it to healing mode, it doesn't really showcase it, but if you don't switch to healing mode, then you will have electro application, 2 hydro applications, electro application, which means of course 2 lunar charge reactions at the end phase. Of course, to get to more properly hinder our opponent's game plan, it's better to go for Tulpa and hope for the Tulpa skill to activate one of your electro damage summons to create lunar charge, because then the passive skill and talent card from Ineffa activate, and as such the cards in their hand get cost increase, untunable, and as such your opponent is less likely to get rid of those cards by playing them. Yeah. So Tulpa is the better way to go, but it's not wrong to go for Furina and then Furina Burst. Of course, Furina Burst is very good for this deck because it allows us to compensate for the lack of damage that the lack of reaction damage that the lunar charge has. Because of course, if my opponent gets rid of all of the electric shocks on their cards, the only bonus damage we get from reactions is the +2 damage from this summon. So for that reason we have Furina, and Furina Burst is a good round 2 goal to go for. Of course, you don't usually have the dice for it, so you usually end up doing something like Furina skill or Tulpa skill, Ineffa skill, or Furina normal attack, or Tulpa skill, Tulpa normal attack. You know, shenanigans like that, unless you want to tune all your cards to go for the skill plus burst. Anyway, in this matchup we go for the Tulpa skill, hoping to activate one of these summons, and so we do. And this is what I talked about now. We get a half Tulpa on the field, and as such, there's really, like, if we now do a skill, it is more likely to activate one of these summons, so going for Ineffa skill is the better option here. And of course we switch back to Furina to not spread the electro from the opponent's summon. Once again, they have electric shock, you can see here, very lasting, they take the pierce damage from electric shocks. And you can see here we did a reaction there, so now there's once again cost increase and more electric shock. But you can see here, like here we have cost increase on a card that does not have untunable or electric shock. This comes from the fact that Ineffa's talent is random card. And I can already say Ineffa would be much better if the talent card was to worked together with the passive skill, so that they, because the talent card activates every time a lunar charge reaction is triggered, or well, you trigger a lunar charge reaction. If the talent card was tied to the passive skill, so that whenever there's an electric shock it gets untunable and cost increase, then Ineffa would be good, because in that case the opponent would get cards like this: electric shock, untunable, cost increase. That is the combo you need to get with Ineffa for lunar charge to be good. But anyway, in the next match I'm more probably going to explain why that is the case, because the next match is a better representation of that. But for the rest of this match I'm only going to talk about the game plan. You can see there the Tide Seal Stone activated. Now I have a cost increased untunable card. Not that it really matters. I have really no need for any cards in the deck right now. Oh yeah, by the way, in this match, as you can see by Varukash's glow, this is the old version of the deck, the not improved version, or unimproved version. But I think in the... No, actually, I think we only have one game for today with the improved version, but at least that game shows why that version of this deck is actually an improvement. Anyway, there's the new Cold Flame Tyrant doing Cold Flame Tyrant things. I mean, to be honest, this character only seems like a crab variation, because if like, you're gonna see here the game plan. Go for Tulpa skills. Ideally, Tulpa does not die before you burst Farina, but in this case, I decided that it was completely fine. Of course, now we need a way to apply Hydro again to get more electric shocks, so we have to probably switch Farina off from healing, or at the very least burst Farina. Anyway, as I was saying, the Cold Flame Tyrant, very much like a crab in the sense that the damage reduction from the skill can stack with no limit, same way that crab's shields can stack, and the burst does pierce AoE damage and can do high single target damage with the talent card. By the way, there we see the Hot Spring O'Clock nerfed. It now heals only based on the amount of summons you have, which, by the way, I've had this thought and I want to say it here. The Hot Spring O'Clock nerf, this is like decent, because now it is based on the amount of summons you have. Personally, I would have done the following to nerf this card. Keep the original 1 HP plus the amount of summons, but make it a 2 cost unaligned dice. Why, you might ask? Compare this card to Mondstadt Hash Brown. Mondstadt Hash Brown, 1 dice you get 2 HP. The original version of this card, for 1 dice you get 1 HP plus the amount of summons. Totally busted in the way that you only needed 2 summons for Hot Spring O'Clock to be always better than Mondstadt Hash Brown. And of course, the idea with Hot Spring O'Clock was to make it so that summon decks had their own food card. The problem was the fact that any deck that could get 2 or more summons would benefit by running this food, because for 1 dice you could get 3 HP, which is very, very good. Like comparable to Geo Resonance, 1 dice you get 3 shields. So I would have done keep the original healing amount, but make it a 2 cost, because in that case, decks that don't have that many summons, like decks that are only able to create like 2 summons, for example, they are less inclined to go for Hot Spring over Mondstadt Hash Brown as a healing card, because now, okay, 2 dice, that's a bigger investment. But for summon decks where you anyway have a bunch of summons, you need to wait for those summons to expire before you want to re-summon them. Investing 2 dice in healing is like it's a better deal for summon decks, because they wait for the summons to get their full value before they summon again. So yeah, personally I would have changed the cost of Hot Spring O'Clock, because I think that would have balanced it better. By the way, there you can see, this is the sort of ideal stuff you want to get with, actually right here we get to see, this is the best possible scenario for your Ineffa decks. Electric Shock, Untunable, Cost Increase, Invalidation. All the possible debuffs on a 1 card. That is the best possible thing you can get with Ineffa, and it is the one thing you want to get. Anyway, let's get into the next game and I'll actually discuss why Ineffa isn't that good. Now, in this game and the following game, we are only going to concentrate on 2 things. Why Ineffa isn't that good and how you can counterplay Ineffa.
Commencing task.
And for this first match we are going to, because you can see we are Ineffa versus Ineffa, this is a good match to showcase why Ineffa's kit isn't that great as it currently is. Though, actually, no, hold on, let's put it like that. I do want to say, even though I'm going to be criticizing Ineffa a lot, or actually not criticizing, I'm basically going to say in this video that Ineffa is not good. Remember, this is very much the same case as with Natlan characters and their whole Knights of Blessing mechanic. We currently only have Ineffa as a Nordcry character. Going forward with more lunar characters coming from Nordcry, we are likelier to see improvement in Ineffa decks. You can see here, round 1 we had bad dice, I didn't want to tune everything, so I simply went for a normal attack because we didn't get Providence and the talent card to apply Electric Shock to my opponent's cards. Of course my opponent also doesn't seem to have the best of luck, or at the very least they went for... Actually no, my opponent has much better luck because they were able to go for the summon and Tulpa's talent card, which means they get a summon at the end of the round. But anyway, you can see they have electric shock, I do not, so I'm currently in the better position. Of course, looking the scenario now, I'm in the worst position. They have the summons already, I have nothing. So here we go, round 2, I have better dice. Note this, I have the talent card, they do not. I have Ineffa's talent here. Keep that in mind. For some reason they go for Ineffa Burst. I mean, it does refresh Brigitta, I think that was how it was pronounced. Anyway, it does refresh one usage for it, so not that bad. We of course go for the skill with Tulpa here because it's a guaranteed reaction, lunar charge reaction. And here comes the first thing. Because how Ineffa's talent works, because it's a random card, you basically have to combo Ineffa's talent with Tideseal Stone that also has cost increase and untunable effects. You basically have to combo Ineffa's talent with this card to probably get cards like, well, like seen before, like now you can see the cost increase is on Serene, but the electric shocks are on Hot Spring of Coke and the arcane card. Of course there's the invalidation from my arcane card. The passing of judgment change, which we can actually check in the next game as I have already played the card here. Anyway, you can see they take the damage. I have been able to... by the way, that right there, absolutely play Ineffa's talent at the end of the round, before you, of course, if you are about to do a Lunar Charge reaction, then play it before that. But play Ineffa's talent card, especially round 1, play it the last thing round 1, because then if the opponent has one or only 1 or 2 cards, that one card is likelier to get more electric shocks, and then like look at this. Invalidation, untunable, 3 electric shock. Very, very good and very bad for my opponent, because if they play that card it's -1 dice, and if they keep it it's just going to be damage. So even though my opponent, you can see, they have a bunch of summons, they are able to do much more reactions, or have been able to do much more Lunar Charge, simply because I was able to get Tideseal Stone and Ineffa's double Ineffa talent. I'm actually winning here. Of course, the second notable part, you want to play against Ineffa. Now we are going to quickly switch over to that topic. Against Ineffa, there's 2 options. You either play everything you have, or you discard everything you have. Now, of course, discarding is dependent on the deck. Most decks are unable to discard, so you simply have to play everything. So any card that has electric shock, you want to play it. Now remember, because how Ineffa's passive talent works, every card with electric shock will also have untunable And of course in the future, once we get like flints or something, we might see some differences with this. But you can see here, I play everything. Why? Because then I have no cards for them to get electric shocks on. While, let's quickly go see, on their side, invalidation, electric shock, untunable, invalidation, electric shock, untunable, cost increase, untunable. And it only just, it's a matter of time until those electric shocks will take my opponent down. Of course you can see here only Fortress of Meropid, but because this electric shock was applied in the end phase and I had no previous, I had no electric shocks when I declared the end of my round. Because this electric shock was applied at the end phase, it does not activate. But if you have electric shocks when you declare the end of your round, if the opponent's summons increase the amount of electric shocks on your side of the field, you will take the full electric shock damage. So you can see here, once the summons have activated, I should not take any electric shock damage.
The taste isn't right.
You can see no pierce damage. But if this card had been, if I had another card with electric shock and this electric shock was applied during the end phase, I would have taken damage from both of those cards. At least I'm pretty sure that's how it works. By the way, by now, you should have also noticed one big problem with electric shocks. You have no way of knowing how many cards the opponent has with electric shocks applied, and no way of knowing which of those cards have the cost increase and which of those cards have how many stacks of electric shock. Basically, you are completely oblivious to the fact how much is the damage you are able to do with electric shocks to your opponent. Like, looking at this, there's 3 cards, because this and this right here seem to have the electric effect, and these ones do not seem to have it. So you are somewhat able to count, like, okay, they have 3 cards with electric shock, so they will at least take 3 electric shock damage. But like, there's honestly, we need some indication, at least like add a number here which tells how many cards have electric shock when you click the opponent's hand cards. I would even like to have the knowledge of how many electric shocks they have in total, because then you can somewhat count the amount of damage the opponent takes in end phase, because one of my losses with this deck has been in a scenario where the opponent goes down to 3 HP thanks to electric shocks, but I have no way to finish them off in one hit, and as such I lose the game. So yeah, one of personal improvements to Ineffa, at the very least, let us know how many cards they have with electric shock, so you get to know the minimum amount of damage they take. Because I have no way of predicting that they were going to take 6 damage from electric shock there.
Cognition module.
So that's already one big disadvantage with running Ineffa. You have no idea of knowing how much damage the opponent is actually going to take, because there's no way for you to know. The electric shock is applied to a random card. So you have no way of knowing if they have one card with multiple stacks until the end phase and when they take that electric shock damage. Secondly, of course, the lack of damage I discussed earlier. Even though you can stack up the Thundercloud's usage, it will still only activate once per round. So the only, once you have one Thundercloud on the field, the only extra damage you get from Lunar Charge reactions is the electric shocks. And if the opponent is able to get rid of electric shocks, you only get +2 damage for your reactions every round. Like I said, in the scenario that your opponent is able to get rid of them. And this all means that, Ineffa simply does not have the damage. My guess is, like I said, in the future we get more Notcry characters, especially when we get Flynn's. Flynn's will likely have some sort of mechanic comparable to, I don't know, maybe Kave, like when Kave can consume Bloom Cores to deal extra damage. Flynn's will likely have something similar, that it either consumes, you know, the electric shocks on the opponent's card or the thundercloud usages to do extra damage. Most likely Flynn's will have a mechanic like that. And when that comes out, then Ineffa will be like better. But like currently in this patch, Ineffa is not that great. It's fun to try out if you like want to get used to how the untunable cost increase, electric shock, how the opponent reacts to them. For that, it's good. But if you want to chase wins with Ineffa, I don't recommend. I don't recommend playing Ineffa if you want to try to win games. Anyway, for the last match we have something quite special. Now for this last match, even though there at the start of the video you probably saw I have played 4 Arena of Champions challenges with Ineffa this patch. Couple of them last week, couple of them this week. And I can say, like last week, it was much easier to get wins with Ineffa because opponents weren't yet familiar how to counterplay Ineffa. But this week, it has been much harder because people have already learned how to counterplay Ineffa. And in this match, you see my opponent knows exactly what they need to do to counterplay Ineffa. Like I said earlier, you have the 2 options. Discard everything or play everything. Also in this match you're gonna see my starting hand, no Ineffa talent, no Tide Seal Stone, so we have no way of applying cost increase, which once again, cost increase is the thing you want to get, because that actually has your opponent second guessing whether they want to play their cards or not. And of course, if you haven't already noticed it, my opponent here plays everything, of course meaning I get no electric shocks on their cards. There goes all the possible extra damage you could have gotten. But yeah, like Ineffa needs either the talent round 1 or double Tide Seal Stone as soon as possible. Of course, Fortress of Meropide, by the way, Fortress of Meropide has gotten a buff, I'd say. It now activates every time it has 5 stacks, and it applies Invalidation, which we saw earlier, to any card instead of only event cards. Of course, it's now randomly based. By the way, here the new Passing of Judgment. If your opponent plays an event card, grant Invalidation to all event cards. And if they discard, then place 2 cards of the highest cost to the bottom of their deck. I haven't seen it happen, but my assumption is both of these effects can happen. So if your opponent plays event card, then they get Invalidation. After that, if they discard, then the 2 highest cost will be put back to the bottom of their deck. But the big notable part here is that the all event cards get Invalidation. Of course, Invalidation somewhat different from what it used, well, somewhat different when it comes to Fortress of Meropide. Invalidation can apply to any cards, but with this arcane card it only applies to event cards. But with Fortress of Meropide you can get Invalidation to any card. Anyway, here you can see the game plan I mentioned earlier. You can absolutely go for Arena skill. There's, by the way, the Fortress of Meropide. Yeah, you can see consume 5 points once you get them, apply Invalidation to 1 random card. So you want either Fortress of Meropide's Invalidation combined with Electric Shock Untunable, or you want the cost increase combined with Electric Shock Untunable, or in the very rare ideal scenario where you get all of those 4 different debuffs on the same card. And then the opponent has to make the choice of whether playing like a cost increased card that has no effect, or do they keep that card in hand and continuously take damage in the end phase? Also, I actually forgot to mention this earlier, but because the damage from Ineffa ramps up over time, because the main damage you get from Lunachar's reactions comes from the electric shocks. With Ineffa you want to go for the more slow stall type, or actually let's say mid-range decks, which is why I have, you know, Mushroom Peach's, Maiden's Beloved's double Hydro here in the deck. I forgot to mention that, but at least I said it now. Once again, you're gonna see my opponent played all the cards they had. No extra damage coming apart from the +2 from the Thundercloud. And this truly is like the biggest way, the best way to counterplay Ineffa. Just play all your cards. Like said, against playing that, like now we have the Fortress of Meropid here, but my opponent starts first. You know what that's going to mean. They are simply going to play those 2 cards they have in hand before the invalidation gets applied. By the way, the invalidation, the 5 stacks, they do not disappear until they are applied. So that Fortress of Meropid is going to stick there with 5 usages for quite some time. You're gonna see here we go for the Florina Burst for a bit of extra damage. I mean, what else can I do? My very best thing here is that they went to play that Tenacity of the Millilet, because that means they were only able to do 1 action this round, which means I was more than happy to burst Florina, and I actually have some time to collect stacks for Florina. We go for Ineffa skill, even though that will give the rock guy damage stacks, but it's going to be fine. Now we are hoping for Tide Seal Stone to do something here, because this is applied at the start of action phase, so when the opponent actually has cards in hand. You're gonna see here the damage. Well, we didn't get that many Florina burst stacks, but we do have some decent damage done against the Wolf Lord here. So there's actually, you know, a sliver of hope in this match, even though like 4 Bond of Life, 2 Bond of Life. All they need to do is go to Arlecchino and actually attack. But you can see here, they played the card which had the Tide Seal Stone effect, and then they tuned the other card. Of course, the Tide Seal Stone also has untunable, so we know Varanara had the... Oh, it actually says here, I didn't... You can see here that it was played with this. Oh, look at that, I didn't know that. That's quite nice. But yeah, opponent finally goes to Arlecchino. I would have gone to Arlecchino earlier, but they decided to go for Wolf Lord for whatever reason. But you can see here, it's still looking very good for them. I mean, multiple stacks of Bond of Life, the talent means my summons won't do that much. Of course, I try to get some stacks for the Florina Burst here, and you can see the 5 stacks from the Fortress of Meropid, they aren't disappearing anywhere until the invalidation is affecting one of the opponent's cards. But thanks to Florina Burst, and this is why I have Florina, we are actually able to take some decent HP away from Arlecchino, and now they only have 3 Bond of Life, meaning that even if they now burst, they don't have that much HP left. So there is indeed a sliver of hope in this match. But you can see my opponent, once again, Tide Seal Stone effect happened. They tune 1 card, they play the 2nd card. Okay, now I'm curious if we click... Okay, there it doesn't say it has the effects of, like, this. I wonder why it keeps it here, even. Not that it really matters. Opponent goes for a skill, of course, so that they get more point of
Commencing
life
task.
for healing from the burst.
Everlasting as the
And there
moon.
they go for the burst. Now it is
Installation
not
chamber deployed.
looking good for me. There's point of life, low HP, Alkino is healthy. So, what can I do here? Well, what else can I do except get very, very lucky? And this is why this version of the deck is an improvement. The Blessing of Ams can be used for stuff like this. And voila! There goes most of Alkino's HP, but you can see I still have the summons for the end phase, so Alkino will actually be taken out this round. And we can see they have already played their arcane card.
I hear
Unless they pull Georesonance. Georesonance is the only card that can save them, because remember they get one. They can get one Crystallized Shield from doing a skill onto Tulpa here. But my opponent looks for it, they weren't able to find it. Actually, another Lotus Scripts would have also won them the game, but they didn't get lucky. That is of course the downside of tuning and playing all your cards. You are reliant on the 2 cards you draw, and if those 2 cards aren't good, well, tough luck. But I gotta say, this match was an exception. Most people who played against Ineffa in that manner of tuning or playing all they could, they were able to win against my Ineffa deck. So yeah, Ineffa, as it currently is, she is not good. But I have a sneaking suspicion once Flints gets added to the game and we get more possible ways of, applying cost increase on the opponent's side of the field, then Ineffa will be good. But that's all for today. I'll see you all next time.